Well, I can hear you now, Bravo. Sorry for that. I am here with Dr. Mike Masiapato. He is the head of the Border Management Agency, a novel new state entity of the Department of Home Affairs, focused around strengthening border control. Now, the issue of immigration is an important one, as the world over, not only for the African continent, but also for developed nations, European countries. This has been a concern that has been raised on the table. But more than that, in this particular G20 summit, there's a focus on Africa integration, as well as the adoption or the pushing ahead, rather, of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and how that features to the rest of the world, the richest countries in the world. So when it comes to the conversation around Africa, integration is important, and the entity that manages our borders, that essentially is the gateway to the rest of the continent, is the Border Management Agency. Thank you very much, Dr. Mike Masiapato, for your time. Talk to me about your work, in terms of securing South Africa's borders. As we heard from Operation Dudula, who are protesting outside, that South Africa has an immigration problem.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Qaanitah. Maybe let me start by saying, yes, the Border Management Authority has effectively been established as an integrated border management model with the intention to intensify the work around the solidification of the border management environment. Obviously, we are in the process of building the capacity of the authority as we speak, but otherwise we have also started doing some work which has some bit of an impact in as far as border management is concerned. I think you will be aware that we've also procured some bit of drones that we are actually using in terms of the management of our land borders in particular. And up to this point, we can fairly indicate that we have seen that there is a bit of progress in terms of the work that we have done. We can also indicate that around 495,000 individuals had actually been intercepted and stopped from entering the country illegally. We have actually also intercepted around 114 individuals that we describe as facilitators of illegal migration. All of this work has been done as an attempt to address the issue of the porosity of our borders, which is something that has always been the articulation out there.
And on the other hand, South Africa has to make it easy as a gateway point for the rest of the continent. How is work in terms of integration, in terms of easy inflow of people and travelers?
Yeah, maybe the first thing that I can start by indicating, you will be aware that we are now at advanced stages in finalizing the public-private partnership that we are going to effect around our 6 land top commercial ports in terms of opening them up, in terms of redesigning them for the purposes of opening them up to ensure that there is a better movement of traffic around the port environment. So on that basis, we are going to open up Libombo to Mozambique, Beitbridge to Zimbabwe, Oshuk to Eswatini, Maseru Bridge, as well as Fixback to Lesotho together with Kopfontein. So once that work has actually effected, during the course of next year, we are going to start some bit of work around that particular reality. But in the interim, we've also done some bit of work in integrating various standard operation procedures within the port in terms of making sure that we bring some seamless movement around the port. I can give a very typical example regarding Oshuk Port of Entry to Eswatini. We actually instituted what is called the time release study, where we activated some private sector role players to come and check how are we processing the movement of cargo in the ports, and arising from that be able to give us recommendation. What can we do to improve the processing? And arising from that, I can confirm that lately, when we went to have an assessment in terms of the impact of that, we've been able to reduce the waiting time on the N17 corridor from around 3 hours to about 20 minutes. So we have started doing this work. I think you will also be aware that those trucks that were queuing on the N1 towards Zimbabwe and the continent we've been able to bring in efficiencies in the port, and we no longer have those incidences of trucks having to queue on the port for a week or 3 days and all of those kind of things.
Because as South Africa being one of the most industrialized nation, the success of African Continental Free Trade Area depends on how well we manage our borders.
No, it is very much fundamental. We fairly agree on that particular assertion. And by the way, there's a lot of consignments that gets into the continent via the Durban Harbour, through the N3 into the N1 and ultimately into the continent. So on that particular basis, South Africa plays a central role around the implementation of your inter-Africa trade, but also the issue of your sub-regional economic integration, but more importantly, inter-Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We need to drive that particular assertion. It is on that basis that we've also started engagement around the implementation of the one-stop border post, which we are going to be implementing with our 6 immediate neighborhood.
But that's been in the pipeline for a long time, Mr. Masiapato.
No, yes, it has been in the pipeline for the longest time, but I can confirm now as we speak, the one-stop border post bill has just been approved in the National Assembly, and now it is going to the National Council of Provinces for it to be approved. Once it gets approved in the National Council of Provinces, and then the President signs it into law, we are then going to start implementing the one-stop border post. I can also confirm, by the way, that we have already started implementing it in terms of Lebombo with Mozambique. We co-locate with the Mozambicans in kilometer 7 on the South African side, and also co-locate with them in kilometer 4 on their side. But we only do that during festive period when there is a high levels of the movement of trade. All of these things, we are starting to do them to make sure that we at least make sure that what had always been articulated, particularly at the political level, starts to see itself actually happening on the ground in terms of making sure that Africa start to trade with itself, but we also deal with this thing of trucks having to sit on the corridor for the longest time. So we've started doing the work.
Because there's no point then that G20 leaders back up and support the Africa Continental Free Trade if the implementation at the physical movement of goods is inhibited. Finally, Dr. Masiapato, you were responsible for the inward processing of all of these world leaders and guests that had arrived at our 3 ports of entry. Talk to me about that process. Was it stressful at all? And how did you keep up with the logistics?
Yeah, you see, this time around, we have actually learned when we did the BRICS Summit in 2023. Remember, at that time, we didn't do too much of the work ahead of time, and that is why we had a lot of hiccups there and there. This time around, we had to make sure that we prepare ahead of time. And what was the fundamentals? We actually engaged with our colleagues from the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. They had to actually talk ahead of time with the rest of these countries' embassies to make sure that we put clear what are the requirements to enter South Africa, to indicate if you are actually coming through with a diplomatic passport, there is no need for visa. If you come with an ordinary passport, for this country there is a visa requirement. If you come from a yellow fever infested country, we had to put it clear that there is a requirement for a certificate. So because we did a lot of that work ahead of time, this time around when the people arrived at the port, we didn't have much issues. We were able to facilitate, particularly the heads of state, on Thursday as well as yesterday, until overnight into this morning, and we've been able to bring everybody successfully into the country without any challenge. But additional to the heads of state and some of their delegates, we brought in over 3,000 journalists that come from all over the world, and we processed them into the country without any challenge across the 3 ports, OR Tambo, Lanseria and Waterkloof Air Force Base.
Thank you very much. That was Dr. Michael Masiapato, with border management playing a critical role in the logistics of this Leaders Summit. There had been in the past issues around delegations arriving, and South Africa learned an important lesson. Also with earlier officials telling us that the success of the summit would have hinged on logistics, and that's why it was critical, Bravuyo, that South Africa got it right with the border management agency playing that important role. Back to you in studio.